Stuart, I have a question.
Which
Um, in the often difficult moments of the day, moments of concern, um, anticipatory anxiety, how can I remind myself to go vertical? How can I remind myself when I'm not meditating and I'm in those difficult moments?
Well, that's why you have difficult moments when you, just to remind you of that. It's not how can I remind you? Look, we all have them every day. Things come along that, and they just remind us. That's their purpose. That when we go to meditation class, when we sit down and work on our own at home, we have to go deeper, get stronger inside, build a deeper connection with God. We almost need those things. I hate to say it, it almost sounds like masochism, but we need them because we won't remind ourselves to go deeper. So we get anxiety, we get touches of depression, unhappiness. It's just given to us by a higher energy to remind us, hey, look, you haven't arrived yet. You haven't gotten there yet. So these are not negative things, they're positive things, just depending upon how you see them. You get a little depressed and you get, oh my God, you start beating yourself up. And it can last for months. You get a little depressed and you say, okay, I've got to sit down and work on myself to get stronger than this. And it can go away in seconds, the depression. It's completely dependent upon each and every one of us. And as strange as it might sound, all those negative things that take place in us, they're not negative, they're just reminders. You got to do something about yourself. You got to grow. You haven't arrived yet. There can be no better reminder you haven't arrived yet. God has arrived. The only thing that's perfect in the universe is God. The rest of us will spend a lifetime being imperfect, and that imperfection is given to us as a reminder that we have to spend time working on ourselves and growing. It's a wonderful way to eliminate positive and negative from your life. What we usually do is we just leech onto these things. And I mean, when I was younger, I would get depressed. Sometimes it would last for 3 months. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know what it was all. I would leech, I would get angry, I'd get upset, I would, I'd get drunk, I would, to try to get rid of the depression. Not knowing that it came to remind me, Stuart, you got to find a spiritual teacher, somebody to train you in how to get free of you, of me, Now, this is really important because, I mean, when you leech onto these things, they just drain your energy out of you. And sometimes, as I said, it goes on for months, more than months. Many people, it's just a permanent occurrence inside. And they don't know what to do. So they take uppers and downers and inners and outers and all kinds of pills and just to kind of balance them off. But they never resolve the problem.
Hi, Stuart. I have a question. This is Derek.
Mr.
Thank you so much for the meditation and the benefit in my life. Is it ever possible to stop emotionally manipulating people?
Excuse me, you have to repeat that.
You know, is uh, emotional manipulation. I at first I was like, oh, this is I won't allow myself to be emotionally manipulated. But it turns out I've been the one doing it the whole time.
Welcome to the human race, Derek. Look, you can't be emotionally manipulated if you are centered in the foundation of your being. If the hara is really strong, if the chi is strong inside you, nobody's going to be able to manipulate your emotions. People will try, but they're not going to succeed. So it's the same answer. When you encounter people that try to do that, and you get caught up in it, it is just a reminder. You got to get stronger. You got to build it. And it's, again, not a negative thing. Understand? We need to be reminded. Oftentimes, the objective world, other human beings, even we ourselves, go through things that need to remind us that we have not arrived at a state of perfection yet. And emotional manipulation certainly is one of them. People do it to each other all the time. Yeah, generally it's to have sex, it's to have, seduce somebody, this is kind of a game that goes on in life that does a lot of damage to other human beings. But as I say, and I'll repeat it, if a person has developed the core of their being, if they have developed the hara, and they have chi and that kind of power, they're not going to be emotionally manipulated, and they'll never do it to another human being. You understand? They might do it in the sense if the mind and the third chakra get together, without any heart, without any love, without any compassion, then people will be endlessly manipulated by other people. A lot of people that get involved in this practice that I teach, they have hara, they have strength, they have a strong mind, they have no heart. So they become leaders, but they're not leaders filled with compassion, filled with love, filled with respect for other human beings. They want to control everybody.
Is there, Stuart? I just want to make sure I understand that. Is there something about making things into crutches that's really a substitute for a spiritual life? It sounds like that's the only crutch that works.
Well, a spiritual life is a crutch, and it's not a crutch.
I mean, the discipline of being centered.
Hmm?
I mean, the discipline of being centered.
Wow, that's the work, Derek.
Yeah.
That's a lifetime's work, just learning how to stay centered. And we fall away from it. As soon as we get into our heads, boom, it's over with. As long as we can focus and keep our attention in that chakra below the navel, we'll be centered. But the problem is people forget, they don't have enough training, and all of that, again, is not negative. It's just telling you, hey, you got work to do on yourself. Be grateful for it. You have work to do on yourself. And there's nothing wrong with having work to do on yourself, to having that kind of humility. I have not arrived yet. I don't have to be perfect. And all of these extraneous factors are just reminding you haven't arrived yet. You've got work to do. And that's really healthy. And the incredible thing about that is you don't have to go looking for it. It just comes to you. You don't have to manufacture situations that are going to test you. They come. Just getting up in the morning
Yeah,
situation.
thank you, Stuart. I don't have to do that, but boy, I can see that I've chosen to do that a lot in my life, thinking that was a good idea. It really isn't.
Doesn't
Thank you.
work, Terry. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to manipulate yourself. It doesn't work to manipulate anybody else. All it creates is a labyrinth of tension. And it creates a lot of problems in the lives of people. So just allow all of that stuff to remind you what you got to do inside yourself. And then when it comes to dealing with other people, you'll deal with love, with compassion, with forgiveness. You'll thank them for being in your life because either they're loving you to death or they're reminding you of how much bullshit you have in yourself that you got to work through. Either way, it's a positive thing, They're not doing something terrible to you unless in your mind you believe they're doing something terrible to you. And then it arrives at a point where you no longer need people like that to remind you. You can remind yourself. I hope this is clear because it's just basic human stuff. This has nothing to do with metaphysics. It has nothing to do with Kundalini and it has to do with chakras. But it's just basic common sense. Look out at the world and be grateful for whatever it teaches you, even a good kick in the ass. Be grateful for it. I mean, I learned to be grateful. Rudy used to kick me in my ass all the time. And eventually I had to start, Stuart, grow up. He's telling you that you need to work deeper on yourself. Does anyone else have a question? If you want, I'll kick you all in the ass all the time. It's not a hard thing for me to do. I used to do it a lot years ago. I don't do it too much anymore, but I used to really do it a lot years ago. And then I discovered it was my impatience with other people, and I had to kick myself in the ass. So I stopped doing it so much. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
Stuart, I have a question, Bob Sink.
Yes, Bob.
Both you and Rudy used to talk about asking inside for help to drop deep negative psychic tension.
Yes.
And there's sometimes I'm doing that half a day, and then it begins to feel like a broken record. And what other ways can I invoke that intention without using that mental language? Some way, in a different way.
Well, I don't know, you feel, go take a swim, run around the block, do something that you don't ordinarily do. That'll break up the tension. Rudy always used to talk, every time he felt like that, he would go buy a shirt. A closet full of shirts. And he used to go, we'd be sitting there. I'll never forget. I talked about this. I would go into his gallery and he'd be sitting there stringing beads. My guru's sitting there and stringing beads, making little necklaces and bracelets. And I would say, Rudy, what? He said, Stuart, I'm incapable today of doing anything else. And I have to accept my condition and let the universe work on me, and this will pass. And the next day he was like Shiva, 50 arms and eyes and doing a million things, So you have to be intelligent about that, about what works for you, not to get into a rut even asking for help can be a rut. It comes like a broken record. You're right. So you ask for, I don't know what, something else. Something that'll tickle your funny bone. It'll break up the routine. Nothing worse than routine, habit. I mean, I learned a lot from Rudy, just on basic, as I said, he used to kick me in the ass all the time until I discovered it was I had to kick me in the ass to remind myself to grow. And when I started doing that, he stopped kicking me in the ass because I was growing, much higher levels of consciousness were manifesting inside me. He told me, Rudy, he said, he told me this really truly. He said to me a lot of times, you'll never need another teacher. I will give you everything that I have learned. He told me this, I don't know, 50 times. It's one of the reasons I never look for another teacher when I do this work. Because what Rudy was conscious of and what manifested in his life was so extraordinary. I never saw it in another teacher. So I do his work. I went to other teachers. I went all over India to gurus and rinpoches, and swamis. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome, Bob. So if you want me, I'll kick you in the ass until you start kicking yourself in the ass. All right. I don't mind. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay. Well, God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you for kicking me in my ass. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. There'll be a class on Wednesday. And God bless you all. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Good night.
All right.